Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Shall we start, Dr. Iza? Is it clear? Is my voice clear?
Yes, it's very clear, Dr. Mira.
Sorry,
Over to you.
Okay, all right. Alhamdulillah.
Okay, Assalamualaikum and good afternoon to everybody. Before we start our session this afternoon, let us recite Surah Al-Fatihah as our for our opening session.
Assalamualaikum, Izawati. Oh,
Waalaikumsalam, Tan Sri.
sorry. We just finished our board, and after the board, there's a lot of things to tie loose ends, and here I am now with you.
Okay, thank you very much.
My
Okay,
pleasure.
for this afternoon session, it will be moderated by Dr. Mira. So it's over to you, Dr. Mira.
Okay. Is this a Sembang Santai type or what?
It's not a Sembang Santai. It's more to webinar, Tan Sri, on the concept of Sejahtera leadership.
Okay. So you think I make a presentation?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Let's go.
Okay, all right. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you, Dr. Iza. Right. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Greeting to panelists and honorable rector, respected audience, honorable rector, Professor Emeritus Tan Sri Dato' Zulkifli Abdul Razak, rector of IIUM, and ladies and gentlemen, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So let us start the webinar with Basmalah, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. It is my great pleasure to welcome everyone, especially to this very special event, which is the webinar on Sejahtera leadership. My name is Mira Kartiwi from Center for Professional Development, International Islamic University, and I will be moderator for today's webinar. This webinar is actually organized by Center for Professional Development, and I would like to thank the team for organizing this event. MasyaAllah, Jumu'ah Mubarakah wa Barakallahu Fikum Jami'an. And leadership is something that is very important for us, both as individuals as well as organizations. And leadership is something that is very close to us. As we live by it at a very micro level, we lead ourselves, our family, our organizations, and community. And this webinar is actually aims to provide audience with the concept of leadership, Sejahtera leadership. And Alhamdulillah, with us today, we have our honorable rector, which is the person who coined the Sejahtera leadership. And he himself is the leader of IIUM, our community, and inshallah, we will make an impact as what he aimed for, which is for Rahmatan lil Alamin, inshallah. So let us move to the next agenda, and just a little housekeeping for these sessions. I really appreciate if the participants, if you access the webinar through phone and computer, please access either. Please do not access the session from using both, because sometimes there's a feedback on the audio, as well as please keep your computer microphones muted. There will be a sessions in which we're going to allow the microphones to be unmute, and then you can ask the questions directly to the speaker. And please use the chat box if you have any technical difficulties. And I really appreciate if you would like to raise questions, perhaps you can put the questions in the in the chat box first, and then I will highlight during the Q&A sessions, inshallah. So thank you again, Tan Sri, for being with us today. And we look forward to your presentation, and the session is yours. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mira, and I am happy that there are people who are interested in this Sejahtera leadership, because I think this is something that has been going on in my head for the last 20 years. It is not something which is new. 20 years ago, when I was in USM, when I was asked to manage a university then in the year 2000. I was just looking at what is it that we need to do that is different from other people. I mean, not being different, but I think the university at that time in USM, UXM dia punya history was a little bit different. There's a lot of activism. Penang itself is a sport of activism.
Sorry, Tan Sri, I think your mic is mute.
I've been talking to myself, so I didn't mute another problem. Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin wassalatu wassalamu syafil anbiya mursalin sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajmain la haula wala quwwata illa billah. Thank you, Mira and brothers and sisters. Let's make this as informal as possible. So that we can get to the core of thing. We cut through all these other protocols and whatever it is, get to the crux of it. I was just mentioning this Sejahtera thing has been with me for the last 20 years. When I was asked to lead University Science Malaysia in the year 2000, quite unexpectedly, one of the things that I'm asking myself in the year 2000, how does the 21st century differ from the 20th century? Yeah, that was a major question that I asked. I mean, we are really at the threshold 2000 and 2001, and there must be a difference between the year 2000 and 2001. It cannot be just the same. So I was looking for that answer, and the word Sejahtera comes into being when I read the Falsafah Pendidikan Kebangsaan. That was the initial. Then the word Sejahtera. Dia mengatakan bahawa kita mesti sejahtera, mempunyai kesejahteraan diri. Being a science person, the word sejahtera does not make any sense to me. And I start to dig and ask people, and there's not too many people also understand what sejahtera. Bila dia kata kesejahteraan diri itu maknanya you need to operationalize the term. You cannot say kesejahteraan diri and then you don't know what is it all about. Then how do you operationalize it? That was my biggest problem. And alhamdulillah, to cut the story short, we dig and we get to somewhere now. And I think the issue is basically how do you understand this within the context, that USM context, and now UIA context, and now also a kind of a global context. People are beginning to be interested with this. But let me start off by sharing this slide. Okay, is that clear with you? All right, the word here is Sejahtera leadership. I just want to put centering on justice, because at the end of the day, this is what we are going after. At least is what I'm going after. In the academia, I believe our main core business is to look for justice, is to find justice, is to implement justice. And this is what I differentiate ourselves as an institute of knowledge and an institute of politics. The politicians are not interested in justice. When they talk about leadership, they're more interested in power. So we need to, I draw this line very, very clearly. That's why I don't quite celebrate politicians into university, because they come here, they want to get power out of us. They do whatever it is, they get voted in, and once they're voted in, then they do whatever they want to do. And finally, the question of justice sometimes are not even there, where they're all rushing for power. You can see the story now in Malaysia, that everybody is jostling for power, whether it's right or wrong. It does not matter to them. Whether it's just or fair, it does not matter to them. To me, it really is important that we focus on justice. If you have power and you can dispense justice, fine. But if you have power, then you abuse justice, then I think that's not what we want to do. So, but I want to start off by this definition of what is God. Sometimes this doesn't work. What is leadership? This is another big question. We always say this people is a good leader, that people is not a good leader, and so on. So many judgment is made, and sometimes the judgment are made over certain words that you use, teamwork, competence, and many others. But it's just a demonstration, and it depends on what sort of qualifier you use. Then you say this people is a good leader or not a good leader. But it's not that easy. as I've dwelt into leadership for quite a while now, there is no one standard definition of what leadership is all about. It really depends where you come from and how do you understand it. Yeah. But there's one statement that I hold on to. The statement is a very simple statement that all of us can use. The statement talks about leaders are people who do the right things. Maknanya leadership is doing the right things. Now the question then becomes, what is the right thing? And then that depends on your context, depends on your worldview, depends on who you are and stuff like that. So we need now to come out to the right thing. For example, if we talk about Sejahtera now, what is the right thing about Sejahtera? So the question of the right thing is the issue that I think we all need to grapple with. And from my point of view, when we talk about the right things, there are many ways of looking at it. Now, in the academia, doing the right things, to me, there are three things at least. Our business is to seek for truth and to establish justice. That is no compromise. Why we do all this thing here, read all this book, write all this article, speak whatever you want to speak, because we want to seek for the truth. And then there's truth will help us to establish justice. That is the core business of an academic. Whether you publish in first-tier journal, second-tier journal, to me that is secondary. You publish in a good journal, but you are not seeking the truth. You're seeking publicity. You're looking for fame. You're looking for numbers. You're looking for KPI. Then I think that's not our business. You write this because you want to establish justice and finding where the truth is. I think that is as far as I'm concerned. And we then, when we do this, we become a disinterested party. So we don't really care. We don't represent anybody, no political power, nothing. We are only interested in the knowledge that we've got. And this knowledge is meant to make other people's life better. All right. So if it's for the poor, then we speak for the poor. It's for the vulnerable, we speak for the vulnerable. It's for the whoever. Needs to be defended on the context of justice. We become the champion. We become the custodian. So we don't belong to any political party, any association per se. It depends really on the issue at hand. So I don't associate myself with anybody. As long as it is truth, as long as it is justice, then I will go along with them. The moment they deviate from them, then I will depart. Yeah. So there's no kind of quote unquote loyalty as far as that is concerned, and to me that is quite clear. And the last but not least, I think if we are the conscience of the vulnerable, who speak for the vulnerable is a question that we want to ask. Yeah. In Malaysia, luckily there's not too many of these vulnerable. But if you go to places like India and the places that I've been, misalnya I've been to Papua New Guinea. Yeah, and you go to Papua New Guinea, the hotel that I stayed in, just to give you a kind of an idea, there are 3 fans around the hotel. Yeah, because if you don't have these 3 fans, then these people will break in because they want to survive. They think people on the hotels banyak duit and therefore they take whatever they need to take. So there are 3 fences around it. And I cannot open my window without signing an indemnity form. So if I want to open my window, the hotel may want to write. So I open my window. If anything happens while opening my window, that's my business, not the hotel business. I mean, that's the kind of vulnerability in some parts of the world, but these are the people that we need to attend to because they need our help. And we owe it to them because we are better off. That's only difference. Yeah, we are better off. We are more established. We have enough food. And they do not have. Then I think we need to fight for them. We need to make sure that they also deserve what they deserve in the context of justice. So we then become the conscience of the vulnerable. To me, as in the academia, this is my core business. The rest are just secondary. All right. If I need to write, I write about it. If I need to speak, I speak about it. If I need to, to read about it, I read about it. But when I do something, it's among of these 3, if not all these 3. All right. So you need to define for yourself that what is the right thing to do. So macam IIUM ada dia punya the right thing to do-nya when you look at the mission statement, when you look at the vision statement. This is, as far as IIUM is concerned, is the right thing to do. That's why I'm so obsessed that all of us must know the 7 missions of the university. If you don't know the 7 missions of the university, or you think you know, then I think you are not really doing justice to yourself. And therefore, everything that we do in this university, we need to ask, which of the 7 missions am I trying to get at? Because that, quote unquote, in our context, is the right thing to do. Yeah, it could be Islamization, fine. But what about the others? What about the other 6? What about intercultural dialogue? Yeah. What about international community? What about a deep sense of justice? Yeah. All these are part and parcel that you cannot just talk about one. You need to talk about all the 7s together because they are integrated in this particular sense, right? So if I go into this, then I will say seeking the truth is, yes, seeking the truth lah. Yeah. From the meaning of error, we learn the truth. And if we shut the door to all errors, then truth will be shut off. And this is something that I also think that we need to make mistakes along the way. We cannot be perfect all the time. And this is part of knowledge seeking. This is part of study. This is part of being learned, that you need to make mistakes, but you're prepared to, to rectify whatever error it is. So that is one. And you need to really speak about it. You need to articulate it. You need to discuss it. You need to debate about it. Keeping quiet and just swallowing things down, I think is not about speaking the truth. And how do you seek this truth is one way that we can discuss later. This is another during the times of universal deceit. This is what I think we are in now. Telling the truth becomes a revolutionary act. All right. There's another one that talks, if the government is wrong, then speaking the truth will be a very dangerous thing. In other words, there's always a risk associated in trying to speak the truth and try to look for justice. And that's part of the risk that we take as an academic who wants to actually establish the truth and also to establish justice. So we want to look at this as a kind of part and parcel of our second nature, or maybe our first nature, depending. Yeah, the question of freedom, the question of justice, and this is why I just try to draw this in the USM. Masa tu kita ada the whole notion of university in the garden. I'm trying to tell them, look, truth and justice and truth are all interrelated. Yeah, it grows from one another. You probably cannot identify this. So if the roots is truth, then at the end of the day, it will blossom into justice, it will blossom into freedom, it will blossom into all the good things that we want to, provided we start off with the right seed, and which is truth in this particular context. Yeah? The other one, disinterested party, is basically a person who can share their life experience with the world, and they have seen and heard things that they feel and may hold significance to who they are and will become. Now, what is the word here that I want to emphasize? The word here is life experience. I think half of the time we need this to give ourselves a kind of authority to speak. For example, now we are trying to put this question of transgender. Yeah, IIUM has been doing this work for the last 10 years. But we cannot be speaking for them. They must speak for themselves. Because the moment they speak for themselves, then it becomes very powerful because it is their own experience. If we speak for them, they say, you have not gone through this experience. And therefore, we have lost some sort of credibility like that. Yeah? So when I look at people like Ibit Liu, misalnya, he has traveled the world, this guy. Whether it's right or wrong is a different question. He has traveled the world. He has done so much. Yeah? But compared to an institution like ours, we have not done, I think, as much as he has done. And if you look at it, there are 30,000 students here, and he's the only person. He has done so many things that I think we have not done. Why? Because I think he has got the experience that we do not have the experience. So us as an academic must have that experience. To build that experience is another thing that we will go into later. How do you build that experience so that this experience could be, quote unquote, your credentials? When you say something, people say, he has gone through it. He knows the pains, he knows the gains, he knows whatever that is to be understood, and how then you actually can be, quote unquote, authority as far as that is concerned. What experience do you need in this particular in this particular context. If you don't have the experience, then people will not be able to be convinced over what you said, right? The true scholars are those who are the heirs of the prophet, promoters of the work of the holy prophet, and the custodian of the trust of Allah Ta'ala. That's my definition of what the true scholar is. I think you really need to kind of, translate what you do into something that is beneficial to other people as a part of the trust that we talked about earlier, and this belongs to God, and God alone will know this. Now, then we come to this whole question of governance, which is a new word, but actually it's not new. Governance is just a concept of how we actually organize things. And again, I think in the university, we need to be mindful of what governance is all about, because it helps us to do decision-making, and also that decision will be the context of trying to make things happen. If we make a decision and then there's no implementation, or in the event that the implementation is not good, then I think we will not arrive at the point that we want to arrive at. So the word governance is important. And in the university, normally we talk about governance that do not belong to us. We talk about corporate governance. We talk about business governance. We talk about governance that is not related to education. But here, I think in the context of UNESCO, there is what they call the governance that is related to education alone, which is quite different from the governance that we learn from corporate governance or business governance. And I think this is generally what it is, right? The governance here talks about many things. One is about accountability. One's about transparency, that's quite definitely, responsiveness, equity, and inclusiveness. All these are familiar to us. Effective, stable, and also efficient. The rule of law needs to be followed. But more importantly, bagi saya, is participatory, based sort of on discussion of this sort. That's why I kind of cherish this. We need to share. We need to talk about it. My point of view may not be right. Your point of view may not be also right, but how do you come into terms and find out what is the best middle way so that all of us can come together and get into a consensus as much as possible. Okay? Dalam kita punya SAF, we try to summarize this in the 4 things that we call empowerment, flexibility, innovation, and accountability. In other words, all of us practice this. Empowerment, in other words, you are allowed to do whatever you want to do, as long as you're accountable for it. And that is a part of the governance that we want to create within the university. So I don't have to micromanage you. I don't have even to know what you are doing, because I know you are doing what you're supposed to do based on the trust that we've got. And finally, you're accountable for it. And you also will know that I will do the same thing to support you in whatever you do that is correct, looking for truth and establishing justice. That is already granted. And we built that kind of a rapport. We built that kind of an understanding. You don't have to seek the approval of the university or seek the approval of the rector, because we know that's the fundamental that all of us have gone through. And this works very well in other places. When I met the Finland punya Minister of Education, Finland is the best, if not one of the best education system in the world as it is now, at least through some criteria that is established independently. Saya tanya dia, what makes Finland such a good have such a good education system? And I was expecting some very difficult answer. Dia punya answer is very simple. Dia kata, we work on the culture of trust. And then I asked him, what about if somebody break your trust? What do you do? Dia kata, Zul, it's a difficult question to answer because I've been here for more than 10 years. Nobody broke my trust. I mean, coming from a non-Muslim environment, orang kata nobody broke my trust is something that I cannot imagine whether it can happen in our society. In our society, one day agaknya many people broke our trust despite whatever we're saying about what Islam is all about. Now, so in other words, that basis of trust alone is enough to move this Finland, so much so that Finland do not have exams. So much so Finland do not have these KPIs that we have got. Yeah. Dia kata, my worry as a minister, dia kata, to make sure that my staff do not work very hard until they actually create problem for themselves. Kita punya problem is different. My problem is to make sure that all of us work hard. Dia kata, they don't want to over-exceed what they are given in terms of responsibility. Yeah. So this is what I meant when we know what the good governance is all about. We operate on that kind of a level, so we do not actually have to worry about protocols, worry about rules, worries about laws, because all of us are attending to it to the best that we could in this particular context, and that's the governance that we talk in the context of university. Yeah. Right. Last but not least, the conscience of the vulnerables. Everyone has the right to education. Education shall be free, at least in the elementary and fundamental stages. Elementary education shall be compulsory. Right. In other words, as far as university is concerned, if we can provide education to anybody at any cost, we will do so. And we are now struggling very hard to give this to the people who are vulnerable. There is the refugees. Yeah. We are trying very hard to build a school now for the refugees. Particularly the Myanmars, yeah, and people in the minorities, like Chinese, right? There's a lot of issues with Chinese in China, particularly the Uyghur, all right? And now we have got numbers coming from Japan. People are now interested in studying Islam. There's a Dawah center in Osaka, where we're dealing with very closely. Every week, banyak youngsters visit the place, learn about Islam and know what Islam is all about. Now the question is, once they know about Islam, where do they go? I say, come to our university. We want to open the door to these people because I think this is a place where actually they can find Islam when they come to our place. And it is true education. Education being a right, and I think we can have this da'wah in that context of education. So from my point of view, those are the 3 or 4 things. And the UNESCO now, if you look at it, they've got another project called Education 2030. In other words, by the year 2030, we expect education should be given to the majority of the people around the world. But that is before the COVID. After the COVID, the issue becomes very different because the privilege and the system now is being interrogated by this pandemic, as it were. We'll talk into this a little bit. Yeah. So education is for social justice. If you look at the Education 2030. So and this word justice comes into play again. And we want also to create people who are educated with soul. This is one of the tagline we use. Kita katakan pendidikan pendidikan bersama roh, ya, bukan pendidikan tanpa roh. And I get a little bit worked out when we talk about technology, only technology, because we think technology is a substitute for online education lah, segala bendanya lah. But the question I ask, where is the soul in education? And that's why our language now is about humanizing education, humanizing technology. How do you put back the soul when there is none in whatever things you do? And that is part of the struggle that we are doing today. Yeah. So if you look at this sustainable development goal, people are already beginning to categorize that quite differently. There is a spiritual part, which is about creating peace with working partnership. Yeah? The ecological part is about the alam sekitar, and then about the people part. These are the people part in terms of poverty, right down to opportunities and so on and so forth. So you can reclassify it the way we want to do it, but we have done it in a different way. But one other thing, that all these things are interconnected. So that's why, like I say, when we look at our 7 mission, we cannot just zero on one mission and then you think you're going to solve the problem. No, you need to connect it. How this thing interconnected? How does this reinforce one another? You know, what will happen when they interconnect? You probably find or create another sort of dimension, as we have done now when we talk about SDG. What do you call SDG 18? Yeah. But the ultimate goal in all this is the 5 P's. It's about people, prosperity, peace, partnership, and planet. This is a bigger goal that we want to talk about. And therefore, we don't want to get stuck into any one of this without connecting with another. Maknanya, the planet will not be safe if the people are not safe. The people will not safe if prosperity is not equally shared. Yeah. Prosperity will not be there if it's not for peace. It's probably for something else, for profit making, like what vaccine is happening now. Yeah? And you can only do that by coming together, like we talked about tadi tu, the broad-based consultation to find out where we are in this particular context. Yeah? And I've mentioned this just now, 17 alone is not good. We are working on SDG 18, which is on spirituality, because spirituality is the one that runs through from number 1 right to number 17 or whatever other numbers that you've got. Right. So this is all the landscape that I'm talking about when we talk about Sejahtera, and Sejahtera will then be defined in quite a different way. So again, when we talk about leadership, what is the context we are talking about? Now, oftentimes when you talk about leadership, it is about the man in front, right? So some people, it could be the vice chancellor, it could be the rector, it could be the minister, it could be the prime minister. Everybody else stays at the back. The people in grey are the people who are set, quote unquote, to be the follower, right? And sometimes you have this word boss. Boss is also a leader, but more authoritative, more slavish, more harsh, as you know, as the way we understand. So dia kata you ni bossy sangat lah, then you know what it means. Yeah, you are not that humane person in terms of your leadership. But when we talk about pemimpin in our language, then the concept is totally different. And this is where I come back to the broad-based thinking that I had with you. Yeah, when we talk about pemimpin, there is no one man standing in front; it's everybody together. Okay? No special position for him, no special designation for him, no special name for him, no special seat for him. You know, he's just one of us. In fact, we take him as a leader because of some, you know, values that he has that probably we do not have. Yeah, maybe he's trustworthy, maybe he's more wise, maybe he's respectable. It's about values rather than the person itself. Not about his looks, not about his wealth, not about his, you know, physical nature. No. And this is what pemimpin is all about. And he's among us. Yeah, one among us. And I think that's the situation where we are in today. Right. And therefore, when we talk about leadership, it is about coming together. And the word pimpin means holding hand and working together. Not necessarily one up front, the rest will need to follow at the back. There's no such thing. And therefore, leaders and pemimpin has two very different concepts. The one that I talked to you about looking for truth, justice, making the conscience of the vulnerable, operates on this more than this one. Because when you talk about the vulnerable, among us, there'll be a vulnerable person. And if I am part of them, then I do understand a little bit more where they come from, rather than if I stay away aloof, then you probably not be able to sense it. So getting in touch with people and making this connection and making this, building this trust, I think is important as far as leadership is concerned. Yeah. Sometimes the leadership needs to be hybrid. In the world now today, because everybody is talking about this leadership, sometimes it could be a hybrid thing between, you know, between the pemimpin idea and the leadership idea. But mostly, I think it is this particular context, right? And we know this for a fact because the Prophet used to talk about this, yeah? Everybody is a leader and you are responsible for your leadership. So in other words, minimally, everybody has got a family and you're responsible for your family, right? Zakira, you're a daughter or a son or a husband or a wife. We are all responsible for that family. I want to re-emphasize this because when the government talks about keluarga Malaysia, if you don't understand what the keluarga is all about, then it will not work. Yeah? The keluarga is that unit that all of us are responsible for. And until the keluarga is good, then this keluarga Malaysia thing is another gimmick, another slogan for political purposes, and it will not serve us well, right? But the pemimpin thing, by holding hands like this, you actually can encircle the world. This is so important for me because at the end of the day, we want to connect to what we call in our university the rahmatan lil alamin. It doesn't matter what color you come from, where you come from, but you can hold hands and make sure that we look after our welfare together, particularly in the context of the COVID now. Yeah, we always talk about how to break the COVID chain. We can only break the COVID chain. We also have a human chain at the same time, and that's why all the time we need to stay together as a species, as a human species, so that we can be together in the fight against COVID or coronavirus or whatever you want to call it. The moment this human chain is off, then I think the COVID and the COVID will dominate us again. And I think we see this again and again. All right. I think in Malaysia, when the numbers went up to 20,000, why? Because we begin to, do our own stuff. Yang balik kampung, yang buat. We are not together in unison again. And that's when the time the COVID numbers becomes high. Yeah. So this whole idea of working together, working for Rahmatan Lil Alamin, encircling the world as such, is part of this idea of what Sejahtera is all about, which we will talk a little bit about it. So I want you to have the idea that when we talk about leadership, don't have that Western idea of leadership that I am the only one that is in control. Everybody else needs to follow. In our context, or at least my context, everybody is a leader. So if I'm wrong, you can tell me, Tan Sri, you are wrong. This is what is supposed to be done. And then we can come to terms together to get the best solution from all other people who think what is the way out as far as it is concerned. I think these are some of the quotations which I will not go into. But why Sejahtera leadership? I think the question to me is quite clear. Because for a long time, if you look at the kind of leadership we've got, this is the kind of indictment that we've got. Over the 5,000 years, human activity has reduced the total amount of life on Earth to less than half what it was throughout the preceding 5,000 years. Yeah, 500,000 years. Yeah. So if you talk about here, we are supposed to protect life. If we use the maqasid as a kind of a benchmark, we have not been doing very well. If we are going to reduce the amount of life to this much, to less than half, then I think something wrong with the kind of leadership we've got. And therefore, what else can we do? And this is where the thinking on Sejahtera leadership becomes an important thing. Whether we like it or not, this is happening now. When you talk about climate change, global warming, what it says here, the human influence is the one that is very, very important. Human influence is the one that makes things around us the way it is now when it becomes life-threatening to us alone. I've got a small diagram here that probably we can relate to. If you look at just the world without human being, we have got this, what they call the greenhouse effect, we know, but the greenhouse effect in its natural environment is able to balance between the heat radiated and the solar radiation that comes in. And therefore, the world is habitable. We can survive in this environment for a long time, for many thousands of years. Yeah. But the moment you start to change the environment, in other words, now you're adding more greenhouse gases, your methane, your carbon dioxide, your nitrogen dioxide, or whatever it is, then you find that the heat radiated and the heat that is emitted will not be in a balance again. And this is where we begin to see this effect of climate change and global warming. I'm using this as an example because all of us are involved here. You cannot say I'm not involved here. We are all involved here, and that's why this one here is called the anthropogenic greenhouse effect. In other words, we can only get rid of this if all of us as human beings work together and go back to where it used to be. And this is where the whole idea of encircling the globe, working together, working in unison, working in tandem to solve a common problem is ultimately what we call Sejahtera leadership. How can you come to that level and make sure that we actually can solve our problem in this particular context? And certainly, I think it's not easy. But if you have to extend that, it's not just the global warming now. It's just about also the economic collapsing, the ecological collapse, the social environmental collapse here, and the pollution kind of event that's happening today. In other words, the world that we are building now become inhabitable over a period of time. And there is a disconnect among different countries, but the disconnect is actually about leadership disconnect. And we can begin to understand this when some countries emit, misalnya, more carbon dioxide as compared to other countries. The developed countries emit a lot more carbon dioxide as compared to the poorer countries. Yeah. So the rich country may benefit from this. The poorer countries may not benefit from it. But the negative part, everybody shares. When it comes to pollution, it doesn't only hang around, the developed countries and the developing countries are spared of it. No. When it comes to the negative effect, it shares. Everybody becomes affected by it. Whereas when it comes to the benefits, perhaps maybe the developed countries had a lot more benefit as compared to the developing countries. I think these are the kind of injustices, quote unquote, the unfairness, quote unquote, that we need to remedy, that we need to find solution from. And one of the solutions I thought is basically about that. Yeah. So we do not want this. And what is it that we want now is basically a kind of a leadership that makes sure that everything is fair and square. But I just want to give you another bigger picture. If you look at the world, katalah, the world is created for 4.5 billion years ago, and we have managed to go through all this. Yeah, but we are now at this end here. And this end here is where we actually begin to build our civilization that I told you. It is called the Holocene epoch, or the Holocene age, where the world is so stable, is so conducive that human beings can do their business and start to build their own civilization, including, learning how to speak, learning how to make their clothes, learning how to plant trees and stuff like that. All right. But that is now being dismantled because now we've gone into the Anthropocene age, which is about the anthropogenic activities that I talked to you about. And it begins just recently in 1950s, maybe about 70 years ago or something like that. Right? Very recent. And what does it say? It says basically, if you go ahead with the life that we profess today, our lifestyle, then the whole world will just be heated up and life cannot be sustained anymore. And then we'll go into a kind of extinction. They call it the sixth mass extinction, where thousands of species will die. And finally, the human species will also die. Right? That is the big picture, the ultimate big picture, and we need to solve this problem now, unless we are all ready to go into this extinction that I was talking to you about. Yeah. So many activities has been done. I just want to share with you. In 1992, people start talking about this. Yeah. There is this Rio summit, and there's this young girl that talked about what this is all about since 1992. I like to read their statement. And my father always say, you are what you do, not what you say, right? Well, what you do makes me cry at night. And he's talking, this one is talking to the world leaders in the parliament. Yeah. You grown up say you love us. I challenge you. Please make your action reflect your word. I'm only a child, yet I know if all the money spent on war was spent on ending poverty, finding environmental answers, what a wonderful place this earth would be. This is 1992, spoken by a teenager. Now, how many of us speaks this language now? Yeah. How many of our students speaks this language now? I don't think too many of us. Yeah, because we're so preoccupied with the kind of world that we are in today that we forgot what is it that we are responsible for in terms of accountability. Yeah, at that time she's okay, but now I think if you were to put her in our situation, she will probably need to wear a mask. Yeah. Then it was a question of ozone layers. Yeah, I'm afraid to breathe the air because I don't know what chemicals are in it. Right, there you are. Yeah. And these chemicals now is around us. If not because of the COVID, we will not even wear this mask because we think we are safe. We are not safe. And these are issues that I think needs to grab us as Muslims, because we are part and parcel of the creation of God that creates the world that we need to look after. And we are not looking after this world, then this whole question of truth and justice that I talked to you about probably is missed in a big way. Yeah. So there are many other meetings which I just want to kind of quickly go through. Yeah. 2012, there's a study done by Harvard and talks about this. Leaders are inundated with increasing perception of incompetence, greed, and frivolity at the expense of the governed, the taxed, and the managed. All right. Now, I don't know whether you agree with me, but if you look at Malaysia, this is probably a summary that tells a story. Yeah. Most of our leaders are greedy, frivolous, and also incompetent at the same time. I don't mind if they do this without affecting others. But here it says at the expense of the governed, the taxed, and the managed. In other words, you are corrupted, you do whatever you want to do, but you're also affecting others at the same time. Yeah. And if we change this into us in the university, if you are incompetent, if you are greedy and we frivolous, then who will be affected is our students, our staff. So in other words, whatever you do as a leader, the moment you don't do the right thing, then more people will be affected, more people will suffer from the kind of leadership, quote unquote, that you are dispensing towards them. And I think this is an issue that we need to think of. Yeah. I use this metaphor of a Mickey Mouse leader because when we talk about sustainability, this is what it is all about. You need to balance three things. You need to balance people, planet, and prosperity or economy, right? But when it talks about the leadership of Mickey Mouse, actually it is very much more the economy and very less about the people and also the planet in that sense, right? So we need to now look at other methods of doing it. And now that just now was Suzuki. This is another girl, Greta. She doesn't want to go to school. Since 2018, every Friday she will stay in front of the parliament and tell the parliamentarians, I don't want to go to school because school is not guaranteeing my future. Yeah. And because of that, she created what they call Fridays for the Future, which now has got millions and millions of followers of her age. All right. Because they are now not sure whether we are giving them a future that they deserve, or are we just going to squander their future from the things that we do? And I think this is an issue. And she also, like Suzuki, talks about the same thing. Yeah, the people are suffering and dying. Entire ecosystem are collapsing. We are beginning at a mass extinction. And you can talk about its money, fairy tales of eternal economic growth. How dare you? Right? And this is something that we also are talking in our terms as far as the university is concerned. It's mostly talking about just economic growth as like any other thing, because that's the only theory that we know. Now only people are talking about circular economy and all those things, which is different from what it used to be, but maybe it's too late when you talk about mass extinction and such. All right. I don't want your hope. I don't want you to be hopeful. I want you to panic. And it's an act as if the house is on fire. As far as she's concerned, the global warming is about the house on fire, and they have no time. They actually want us to do something about this. And this is where I think the question of leadership comes again. Yeah. So she became the person of the year in the year 2019. But these are all the indication that at the end of the day, we need to do something. We need to take the leadership by its horn and do something that we can do from the context of Sejahtera, right? The world is on fire, and it's not enough now just to wear that. You need to wear that, and you need to wear that also at the same time. I'm showing this, our life will change. If we do not take this seriously as an academic or as a people who are learned, who knows the facts, and we just ignore it, then perhaps we are not doing something that we should be doing. All right. These are the examples that if you are not convinced from what I say, it's the same place. Yeah, 1926, it looks like this. 1990, it looks like that. 1923, it looks like this. And 2015, it looks like this. So all the glaciers here are melting. We are losing the temperature, as it were. And these are real life, same place, but the environment has changed because climate change and global warming, right? And who's the cause of this? These are us, and we are the one. And therefore, we need now to make amends and to make change as far as you're concerned. Is global warming real? Again, another story. This is what it was in 1928. This is in 2004. This is what it was in 1941. This is in 2004. All the ice here has been melted into a lake. In other words, global warming is real. Kita in this tropics do not realize it because the temperature is warm all the time. When you go to the temperate places, then you begin to see what is the destruction that the globe is undergoing because of climate change and global warming. Yeah, very soon, you'll find that this also will get polluted, will get dried up, and it becomes just another barren land because the global warming sort of encourages evaporation like the Ural Sea, as it were, today. So we need to now go into a kind of an action, and the action that I want to talk to you about is this. Yeah. Now, if you look at what is happening today, from the year 1750 to the year 2000, you can see this curve going up. All right, and it doesn't really matter whether it's about temperature, whether population, climate, carbon dioxide emission, GDP, species, motor vehicle, paper, whatever it is, all are going up. And this is the exponential rate or exponential growth that this girl Suzuki was talking about. Yeah, the exponential growth, we celebrate it because we thought this is a mark of success, right? Little that we know that this exponential growth will later on turn into what we call the global climate change and global warming. And as you go through this, I want you to relate and to correlate with what's happening now. From the year 1700, right, the year 2000, there is this industrial revolution that's happening. First industrial revolution, second industrial revolution, third industrial revolution. The first, second industrial revolution, you are still at a horizontal sort of plane. The moment you hit the third industrial revolution, we go into what we call the great acceleration. Yeah, sorry. The great acceleration means all this growth will go very exponential. And now when you talk about the fourth industrial revolution, you will see this grow even higher. Now, when we talk about the fourth industrial revolution, nobody wants to connect about this. We are only talking about what are the good stuff, but we do not want to talk about what is the bad stuff. The bad stuff is about the temperature will go higher and everything else will also be in that mode as far as development is concerned. Again, this is where the disconnect is because other people keep on producing what they are not supposed to produce so that the world at the end of the day will suffer in this particular context. There's already a book. If you have time, please read this book, The Collapse of the Western Civilization by two professors. One is Noemi Orokes and the other one is Eric Conway. And this book says, by the end of the century, if we do not solve the problem, the whole civilization will collapse as we have predicted under the Anthropocene. In fact, I remember the dates. The date is 2093. They make the whole calculation. If we do not change our way of life, the way we manage stuff, the world will collapse before the end of the century. And their date is 2093. Yeah, 2093, maybe what, 10, 80 years from now. And some of you may survive, I may not survive, but there you are. Already a prediction that the world will destroy itself if we do not take care of this, right? Well, what is the relationship with this, with the population? We begin to see certain things at the same time. Or that's a clear expression that I talked to you about. When you look at the kind of population that we see today, is what we call the me population. This is the population that we're dealing. The students that we've got are the me generation, right? And the me generation talks about this. 40% of them believe that they should be promoted every year regardless of performance. These are the group that I termed them as the great accelerator. Doesn't matter whether you're generation X, generation Y, generation Z, your intention is basically to just move along, follow whatever that is given to you. At the end of the day, all of us is talking about themselves. How do they benefit without a consideration of the environment, other people around it? In other words, the whole philosophy of Rahmatan lil Alamin do not exist anymore. And these could be our students, this could be our own children, this could be the generation of, the youth that's to come. And this is where I think we need to start making the intervention. This is where we need to train them again. What is life is all about? How do you maintain this whole balance between yourself and the environment? How do you actually care for other people, not about yourself? And that's the reason why we start to look at our curriculum and have this Sejahtera academic framework just to answer this big problem, which is now, beyond us if we don't do anything about it. There are different names for it. I will not go into this, but what is interesting, the way they act. Yeah, for example, if you look this probably is my generation. Yeah, this is probably our children generation. When they see how these people talk, they talk in different languages. Older generation probably want to stay alone. They want to reflect and look at things. The younger generation talks about, you have a problem, you can write to me. This girl will say, you call me. This guy will say, email me. And this fellow will text me. The language is different. I want to bring this to you. The language is different. In other words, their behavior is different. Their thinking is different. The way they act is different. Now, how they can to terms with this so that everybody now can work together for one common cause, despite the differences in language. All these are very subtle. All of these are very subtle that we sometimes do not even notice it, but this is enough to make a change between one generation to another. Sometimes the disconnect between this guy and this guy is just because of terminologies, just because of the language used, and they are not seeing eye to eye, and this could be another problem. The end of it all, if this is a statement that you need to remember, please do. We are becoming aware of the major questions regarding technology are not technical. To him, Peter Drucker, the guru of management, say it is about the human questions. Yeah. And what do you mean by this? If you take this whole picture, this is where before the Industrial Revolution, you can see how the vegetation is all. Yeah. And now we talk about, this is a jungle, this is a concrete jungle we are in now. We are here. Hardly any plants, because we have destroyed it through this so-called Industrial Revolution. All right. And here is where your great accelerator comes in. And who is responsible for this is us, human beings. Right? We are the guilty party. We are the ones who should be answerable for this. But unlike people who are really guilty, when we take a position as a leader, we want to change everything outside. You put the policy, you put the procedure, you create a law, everything outside you want to change, but you don't want to change within you. Yeah, the process is always outside in rather than inside out. And that is the major thrust of many leadership today. If I become a rector, then I need to change everything outside, but I do not change myself. And I think this is a crux of the problem when we talk about how we actually want to implement some of this issue, and generally then it becomes suicidal for us. Yeah, because we have not changed internally, we are just talking about things outside us or the externality, it needs to change. So when we come to a decision making like this, we are probably here now. We want to decide whether we go ahead the way we used to be, or you want to create something which is new so that we can stabilize the earth. How do you act on this? Depends on the kind of leadership. The leadership that we see today will basically go and proceed here because their intention was basically not to save the earth, but basically to save themselves in the context of wealth or wealth gathering. So we will go into what we call the hot house earth, meaning that global warming and climate change becomes the ultimate destruction for us. How can you go into this? Depends on really whether we actually realize what the potential within us we can do as far as that's concerned. That again, this is a leadership disconnect. I just want to end up with a few more quotations. Yeah, I like this quotation because the Garden of Eden is no more. And you can imagine that during the Garden of Eden, what is there? Spirituality is there. Although he probably did not intend to say that, but it might say that when we lose the spiritual values, yeah, then the whole world can change into something else rather than what it is created to be by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? So that is the kind of message that I want to bring to you when we talk about Sejahtera leadership, is bringing back those values, the spiritual values, the intangible values within ourselves, and how do you make yourself better before you make other people better. Yeah. Oftentimes we talk about making other people's better, but ourselves remain the way it used to be. Yeah. For a younger girl like this, as I mentioned to you, she's talking about our house is on fire. So you have two ends. The older generation and the younger generation are talking about the same concern, but who is actually making the change is something that we now have to ask ourselves, right? So let me just finish with a couple more slides. If you want to add the evidence of this, because we're academic, you want to find the evidence of it, betul ke tak betul. This has been, the research has been done when you talk about global warming, climate change at the moment in time. And most of the research will say about 80 to 100% are all because of human beings. Only a small number of research that talks about human beings are not affected at all. Yeah. So in other words, it is quite safe to say that we are the guilty party. Yeah. We are the one that actually are not able to balance between our own world, which is within us, the microcosm, and the world outside, which is a macrocosm. We have this. If we balance this, then you get Sejahtera. If you do not, then you don't. So if you don't balance this now, then the Anthropocene will come into picture and Sejahtera will be destroyed. It's not followed. It's not part of the habitual life that we want to put to do. And finally, like I say, we will go into a suicidal mode altogether. All right. This is the best evidence I can see now. Despite all the things that we have talked about, we think we have learned. When we come to the pandemic, we actually have not learned very much, right? Let me go one by one. When you talk about here, the language we used at that particular point was a wrong language. People talk about social distancing rather than physical distancing, right? And now you find that many parts of the world are still use the word social distancing, particularly in the West, thinking that physical distancing is not the right word. The terminology that tak betul, as I mentioned to you earlier. Then we come to the whole question of these vaccines. Yeah, we thought it is a human problem that everybody should work together and solve the problem. In fact, that was the agreement. But the moment there is vaccines, you begin to see different world will act differently, and I think we know this. The developed countries have ordered much more vaccine than they needed. Sometimes 2 or 3 times more, depriving the world that really needs it in the developing country. They do not have vaccine. Statistics now show that maybe 85% of the developed world is now being vaccinated, when you find that less than 10% of the developing world has been vaccinated. You can see the disparities. Yeah. Why? Because again, the leadership issue. these people decide for themselves only, rather than deciding for everybody in the world, right? Now, the worst has been documented just a month ago. Most of the developed countries, when they have already vaccinated most of their population, they are destroying the excess vaccines within their control. Yeah, US, UK are now destroying it. Rather than giving it, donating to other parts of the world that are deprived of vaccine, they rather destroyed it. I think it's hard evidence, scientifically proven. You can read the British Medical Journal. And why do they do this? Because at the end of the day, they want to make sure that the price of vaccine do not collapse. It's a question of supply and demand again, right? So you remember the quotation that I told you, that I showed you earlier. Leadership today is inundated with perception of incompetence, greed, and frivolity. It's still happening when people are dying in the millions, but it's still happening because the kind of leadership that is now leading the world as such, right? So what sort of leadership do we need? We need this Sejahtera leadership that talks about humanity. Yeah, and the humanity, I think, is an important dimension. Like I say, you can actually encircle the world. Maknanya you can work together, regardless of race, regardless of culture, regardless of religion, and so on and so forth. Only through this means, inshallah, we can serve the world in the context of rahmatan lil alamin. Okay, let me jump a few slides so that we have not much time. Okay. Ernie, macam mana saya nak masukkan ni?
Dah hilang.
Ni.
Okey. Nak masukkan yang itu tadi.
Yang tadi tu.
Ya.
Okey.
Okey.
Okay. Let me jump to this because I see the time is running out. Let me try just to summarize. Where does this Sejahtera comes in? I'm starting from our falsafah pendidikan kebangsaan, the national education philosophy, and we have got this Jerry thing. One is called, we talk about. One is just money, yeah, our physical being. The other word about it is rupa. One is an emotion. We talk about the heart as a symbol of it, the feeling, the rasa. And then one is intellect, which is actually the word buddhi. Now, I want to bring this forward because the word intellect is not a Malay word. I don't know whether there's a word in Indonesia for intellect, but certainly in Malaysia, the word intellect is an English word. The Malay word for it is buddhi. I want to bring this because in this university, we talk about buddhi all the time. Yeah. Last night, we got a function in Wadi Buddhi. But what is buddhi to us? Yeah. Buddhi is actually the makeup of the intellect, and even more than that. We'll explain a little bit more. Right? When we have these three things, then we can actually lead a life. But this life may be not the human life. It is more of the animalistic life because we are short of one thing. Yeah? And therefore, we always call this pemimpin atau pendidikan tanpa roh. Because what is short here is basically the rohani part, the spiritual part that I talked to you about earlier. Yeah. So we need the roh to start life the way we want it, because with the roh, I think the question of intention, the question of niat becomes supreme. All right. And from niat, we begin to move into decision and also action. And once that happens, then I think we create another value within us, and that is the value of buddhi. Okay, what is buddhi? Buddhi is basically of three things, at least from our cultural dimension. And this buddhi actually comes in when the roh interact with the body, and then it brings its value alive. And we have three levels of buddhi. One is what we call buddhi bahasa. Yeah. Buddhi bahasa is about our expression, the kind of feeling we have, especially orang Melayu. We are very emotional in our. So when we talk about saya rasa ataupun perasaan saya, jangan singgung perasaan saya. We are very, very emotional in that particular sense because the buddhi is very much part of us. So in other words, when we speak as a Malay Muslim, we want to make sure that the language we use do not hurt other people. Ya, bahasa kita bahasa yang halus, bahasa kita adalah bahasa yang berlapik. Bahasa kita kadang-kadang is not very direct because sometimes we do not want to offend people. And that's the makeup of orang yang berbudi bahasa. Right? Dan budi bahasa ini will lead you to another value which is called budi pekerti. As you are good in your language in that particular expression, you find that your budi pekerti follows through. Jarang orang bahasanya lembut tapi perbuatannya kasar. Yeah, soft spoken, but he's very violent in his nature. It's not the case all the time. Yeah. So we have these two balance between budi bahasa dengan budi pekerti. Again, that marks the kind of person or the kind of leadership, if you want to put it that way. Right? And all of this is balanced with another budi, which is called budi bicara, and that's where the roh comes in. The right and the wrong, yeah, the good and the bad. How do you balance that? And that is where I think the ultimately where the spirituality comes in. Now, these three things needs to coexist. And when we coexist, then we say you ada pemimpin yang ada roh. And normally in our language, we call it the word budiman. I want to introduce the budiman because in our roadmap, the word budiman is there. What does budiman means? Budiman adalah orang yang bijak berbudi. Bijak berbudi means, yeah, to dispense things off. Yeah, orang yang berbudi normally would like to give things, make other people feel good, make other people feel better. And that's why dalam pantun kita, ya, pisang emas dibawa belayar, masak sebiji di atas peti, hutang emas boleh dibayar, hutang budi dibawa mati. Budi is such that you cannot pay because you are doing it out of your own sincerity, you are doing it out of all your own notion as being a human being. You don't do this because you want a grade, you don't do this because you want a credit, you don't do this because you want fame, you don't do it because you want anything else but, yeah, you have nothing to ask for. If God wants to compensate, Alhamdulillah. Otherwise, itu kerja kita sebagai manusia yang berbudi dan seorang budiman. And the budiman in the words, lagi sekali dalam dictionary-nya, mengatakan adalah orang berani dan bijaksana. To me, these two very important words. Alright. Kadang-kadang kita berani, tapi kita tidak bijaksana. Kadang-kadang kita bijaksana, tapi kita tidak berani. So in the search of truth, these two must come together. Yeah, you have the courage to say, but you say it with a lot of wisdom. All right. If you say something with no wisdom, then you probably may not find truth. You may find different issues. You get into trouble with other people. All right. So these three things, bijak berbudi, berani, dan bijaksana ni, to me is part and parcel of the leadership that actually assumes a sejahtera. And how do I say that? Because at the end of the day, this is where your adab comes in. Yeah. The adab means you, orang budiman ini hold on to amanah, hold on to principle until they die. All right. And there's not too many of them now. Yeah. Normally we will compromise our principle because of some other things. Yeah. But here is a person that holds to the amanah. If I say this and I believe in it, then I will go for it. It doesn't matter what else. Right? And that is described by the second D. D is a Malay word called dakar. Dakar is berani, cekal. It's an old Malay word. So amanah and the word cekal and the word berani and the word perseverance come together. Right? If you don't have D, then A will also go because you are not able to sustain it because you don't have the courage to do it. And when these two happens, then it becomes an exhibition. It becomes a manifestation in your akhlaq, the way you do things, the way you conduct things, yeah, the way you manage things. describe this. Amanah and the courage and the bijaksana at the same time comes to B, which is bestari. All these are congregated together. Once these come together in a total form, then the word Sejahtera becomes manifested. When you do this, you go back and you can sleep like a baby because you know that you have satisfied whatever you want to do. And that's where the Sejahtera comes in. You know, you feel so, satisfied. You feel so beholden to whatever you have done. And you can live a very simple life without any other expectations. You can live a life that actually is very simple, that you don't clamor for anything else. You have done your share, alhamdulillah, and that's it. And you want to do more because it gives you kesejahteraan. The benefit is that kesejahteraan. You can feel that kesejahteraan multiplying in you the moment you create this habit of budiman and following the adab. Yeah, I was talking about this in many sense, but later on, only about 2 months ago, I read a scientific work that talks about something which is very, very convincing to me, and I want to share with you. Yeah? This word sejahtera ini sebenarnya, when you have this kesejahteraan in your body or in yourself, all right, then your heartbeat will be in synchrony with the brain sort of wave. Scientifically, it is shown. Yeah, I don't have the slides here. If I have, I will show it to you later, maybe. But the heartbeat and the synchrony of the brain is somehow or other, it goes into what they call the word coherence. Yeah. If you don't have sejahtera, your heart will beat differently, your brain will beat different. The communication will not be the same. Now, this study also shows that the heart connects to the brain 6 times more than the brain connects to the heart. Often we thought it's the other way around. Often we thought the brain sends a signal to the heart and the heart responded. But this study says no. The study says another way. In other words, when we do our studies, when we do our analysis of things, where is the heart? Dalam pendidikan kita, the heart is not taken into consideration in a serious manner. Everybody wants to talk about the brain because that's where the intellect is. Yeah, people think that you've got a better intellect, therefore you are smarter, and therefore the heart is not taken into consideration. These studies has turned the things upside down, right? And when these two is in synchrony, then you have this terminology come into operation. Hati budi dan akal budi. Right? And hati budi and akal budi is actually a combination of the brain and the heart working in synchrony. And when that happens, the sejahtera now is seen as part and parcel of that manifestation. So this particular piece of work, which is now being being published, tells me that this perkataan budi ini is more than just what we think it is. It is a very advanced concept of already putting the brain and the heart and the roh together as one entity rather than 3 split entities. And the question is, how do you get this thing together, working together in tandem with one another, that will bring peace into your emotions or whatever it is. And this is where I begin to think that the way we smayang, the way we do our salat, the way we do our zikir, the way we talk to ourselves, are all the manifestation of putting this thing together. Yeah? And this is why when we look at people who are actually able to do this, they are very peaceful. They can see from their face, they can see from their action, you can see from their their gestures. They are very calm and they are not at all what is a Malay word? The Penang word is gelabah, anxious or excited or or things of that nature. They are very calm and they can control their brain. And the last piece of information that I want to share with you is now there is already more evidence that mengatakan there was some of the cells in the brain actually in the heart, and the heart can work on its own. So now there's a terminology that talks about heart-brain combination, and that's a Buddhi combination. The Malay has got it in the context of Buddhi. The English are now trying to find what is the combination between the heart and the brain together as a kind of a hybrid, right? So fundamentally, this is what we are trying to talk about. When we talk about Sejahtera leadership, what we are trying to talk about is basically how do you actually control yourself internally, so that when you actually experience what Sejahtera or peace or whatever you want to call it, then you can dispense peace to other people. You will not be able to dispense peace to other people or Sejahtera to other people if you yourself do not experience it. And the word experience I mentioned to you earlier. You need to experience it. And how do you experience it? Is by coming back to these terms of Buddhi, Akal, Sejahtera coming together. And that's the kind of relationship that we want to develop when we talk about the Sejahtera leadership. Yeah, we are now compiling into 10 modules of this with the help of some colleagues. And hopefully this could be shared with you as we moved on. Because time is limited, I will not go into this. If there's question, we can answer it. But I want you to understand the need for this now. When you talk about leadership moving forward, given the world we are in, we don't want to hang on to the Western idea of leadership that compartmentalize people, or that compartmentalize you, or to start with outside rather than start within. We want to change this whole concept. It starts with you as a whole human being, the brain, the heart, the roh together, mananya the whole human being coming together, experiencing it, and then you become the person who will dispense it to other people outside in the context of managing not only yourself, but also the environment around you. Not only yourself, but also, you know, the rahmatan lil alamin that we talked about. Yeah. So we want to organize, or at least I want to organize the education system coming into this. I want to introduce back the word Buddhi in our education system. I want to introduce back the word adab in its practical sense, not just on its abstract sense. Yeah? And I want to make sure that we all can experience, using the scientific evidence that we've got, can experience Sejahtera in real terms. And this is not a leadership course that you have to pay millions or thousands just to experience it. You sit on 2 days, I think you can already experience it. It's a very simple thing because it's part of our fitrah. It's part of us. It's not something that is new. We can go into this, inshallah, you can experience it almost immediately if you do it right. So Mira, I will stop there. I don't know whether we have time for questions, but if you have some question, I'm quite happy to respond. And okay, I'll pass this back to you. So thank you very much. Assalamualaikum.
Thank you very much, Tan Sri. MashaAllah. It's a very extensive elaborations of what Sejahtera leadership is, not only on the concept itself, but also the comparison to the actual leadership that is currently happening in the world. What is interesting, Tan Sri highlighted about the doing the right thing. That is a very deep, that is a very fundamental questions that I think every individual should ask. And the relations between doing the right thing and the emphasis on justice, trust, and the awareness of the cause when we are not doing the right thing. Okay, so I think if I can relate, this is sort of related to Fred Kaufman concept of the conscious business, where everyone should actually aware the cause of not doing the right thing. What is also another thing that Tan Sri highlighted about the Greta Thunberg, the girl that now even my kids sort of wondering what is she doing, why is she so brave. And one of the poster that in Euronews, because we usually watch Euronews in the morning, there's one poster which is very interesting: do your homework and we'll do ours. So it's actually a question for the adults. Have we been doing the homework? Yet we are asking them to do the homework. So I think this is something that is very important. And back to the initial questions that Tan Sri asked in the beginning of the sessions, whether we have been doing the right thing. Okay, so I think this is very interesting. And then we have one burning question, Tan Sri, from the audience. If I may highlight this question first.
Yes.
This is actually comes from Dr. Said Musa. He highlighted that building trust, based on ta'awun bil taqwa is needed for paradigm shift in IIUM leadership. How do we build the trust when perhaps these notions of helping each other is not yet in place? What would be the micro steps if we can sort of visualize on operationalizing this? Yes, there will be some empowerment, but if we can sort of get a hint, Tansri, on way to
I do this in a very simple way, because I believe that everybody wants to do good. I mean, if you really believe the fitrah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us, there's no reason why I need to be suspicious of Mira or Zainul or Badri. Why do I take the negative part of you when I don't even know you? When I know your fitrah come from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, why do I need to be suspicious of God? If I don't trust you, mananya I would not trust Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in putting a good fitrah in you. And I'm not doing justice in that particular sense. So for me, anybody that comes along, I don't know him or her, I will say this person is good. There's no other choice. Siapa lah? I'll give you an example. When I come here as a rector, I don't know anybody, but I felt that everybody was fantastic. I have no other suspicion. I've not met Badri, but so there's no reason why. And my question is, there's no reason why we cannot start with trust. In fact, if you don't start with trust, I think something is wrong with you. Not the person. You is something wrong with you. Why do I need to be suspicious of a person that I don't even know? Why am I negative all the time? And this is another issue that I want to deal with. Why are we negative all the time? Why do you see other people? For example, when I come here, I sometimes hear comments like, this rector bringing this secularist agenda into IIUM. I mean, why do you need to think of me like that? I am also like you. So why do we need to? So that question to me is a non-question. It's a non-question. We need to start with trust. Unless Badri do something and then I will start to mistrust him. If it doesn't, then it's okay. So in other words, we build that rapport as something which is given. We don't have to trouble ourselves. Already that part is dealt with. I've got 30,000 people. I trust all the 30,000 of them, and they trust me. And I don't need to go into many other things that I don't need to go to. Tak payah nak sign buku, tak payah nak sign KPI, tak payah nak tanya, do I need to clock in? Do I need to clock out? These are waste of time lah. If I trust you, you clock in lah. Or you tak clock in pun tak apa, because I know you will do the clocking in. So I think it's a kind of a mindset question that we need to settle for ourselves, particularly among Muslims, particularly among Melayu. We are always suspicious of other people, not taking them in the right way. So perhaps it's not doing the right thing. I'm not too sure. Okay. So I hope that answers the question.
I think if I can sort of relate to, there's a theory in 1980 by Hofstede and Sri. There's a research in which he measures the power distance, and Malaysia and most of the countries in Asia, actually our power distance is quite high. The score is quite high. It means that we are so conscious with power, and power comes with trust and so on. So I think it is a natural question. It's a very natural question, but I agree with Asri that I think we should start build the trust. It should be something that comes naturally. Should not be something that requires prerequisites. Yeah. But again, it takes willingness from us to actually change. Maybe the shift of paradigm should start from ourselves. Okay, so I agree. Tan Sri, inshallah, I think all of us are ready for shift of paradigm, inshallah.
But maybe also, I think sometimes the things that we see, that's why I'm very critical of the thing that I see on TV, particularly drama Melayu ni, you know. The kind of reflection that we learn from the TV, you must be suspicious of these people first, you know. If my wife comes back late from work, then I must think of what terrible thing she has done, and she comes in late. You know, I will not think that my wife worked so hard that she comes late. I need to actually pamper her. She must be tired, you know. Balik-balik je kita menjadi, pasal apa lambat ni? You know, we take that. So everything gets disrupted. Everything gets, you know, you never get sejahtera like that in your family. So I think this is a mindset shift that we really need to operationalize and make sure that we are in the right mode of thinking, and therefore we need to be selective over what we want to do. And I want to now relate to the younger generation when we talk about social media. You know, the social media is all about suspicion, all about conspiracy, all about the no good things rather than the good things. And I think this is where, again, it builds a kind of a nature that does not belong to us. It's not part of our nature to be like that. And yeah, somebody, I was reading somebody make a good statement. Yes, I also thought of it. They kata, we, because of our fitrah, we are born to be worshippers. And I think there was also a study. They kata, if you look at micro-religion around the world, most of them believe in one God. And most of them want to worship that one God. We are born as worshippers. We like to worship things. But the moment we lose our bearing, then we begin to worship other things. You know, when we miss God in our radar, then we worship other. We will worship something. And hence we have the word idola. Somebody tegur, pasal apa dia panggil idola? Saya suka dia saya puja dia. You see the terminology. Idola is an English word from idol. Idol is berhala. And you start memuja berhala, then you are worshipping something else. So these are issues that I think we need to come to grasp with, and I think if we understand this better, we are a little bit mindful of what feeling we harbor and how do you dispense it to other people.
Yes, Tan Sri. Okay, thank you very much. Actually, Tan Sri have a meeting after this, and I'm so sorry, Tan Sri, but
maybe take another one or two questions if there is. They can.
Thank you so much. I think there are questions from anyone would want to raise the questions, Dr. Badri or Professor Zainul? Because I can only see two cameras on here. Okay, let me just allow the audience to unmute themselves. So if anyone would like to ask questions. Okay.
If there is none, it's okay. I think we will meet again in a different platform.
Okay, I think Prof. Zainul have questions. Go ahead, Prof.
Yeah, thank you very much, Tan Sri. I know that you have that Sejahtera concept in USM, but I think you have made a different approach in IIUM.
Yes.
And now the concept of Sejahtera, where you know that it's not only in academic but also in the perspective of teaching, learning, and how we approach, how we incorporate in our academic. So I think my question is that not, but I just wondering, is a very general concept of Sejahtera, but usually now we are discussing about curriculum review in our kuliah, but we are trying to put that concept Sejahtera academic framework so that the Sejahtera will be highlighted in our curriculum. How the students understand the concept of Sejahtera, how academia understand the concept of Sejahtera. So this is the way that we trying to focus so that the curriculum and the product of our curriculum will be based on this Sejahtera. So this is the things that in academic, I think we are trying to inculcate this in the curriculum. That's quite important. Number two, the trust. Not only Sejahtera, when the word trust comes in, for me, always play in my mind. So I always trust my staff. So we always put the trust forward in front of us. But sometimes the trust also backfire. I mean, the work going slow. There's not much progress going on, but because we put trust. But I think the trust is a concept of how we should understand that the trust, there's some limitation in that. So that's what I'm trying to say. So, but we have to play around with trust. Just okay.
The first response is basically I dare to use the word sejahtera because it is in the falsafah pendidikan kebangsaan.
Yeah.
So that is the context. You know, otherwise, like you say, it can be very loosely used. And the falsafah pendidikan kebangsaan kata, like I say lah, kita mesti mencapai kesejahteraan diri, baru kita boleh menyumbang kepada kemakmuran dan keharmonian keluarga, masyarakat dan negara. In other words, if you don't have that kesejahteraan diri, you will not be able to contribute. That's how I read it. Yeah. So in other words, now when you ask why is the keluarga kucak kacir, why is our masyarakat, especially masyarakat Melayu lintang pukang, why is the negara now very corrupted? Basically, I say kita sendiri tidak sejahtera diri kita. Yeah. So the blame goes to you rather than saying ini Zainul punya pasal ni. I'm okay, you know. Zainul and Badri, they are the one that is creating this problem. I'm okay, you know. So this is what we see all the time. We keep on blaming other people, but we think you are right. But I don't think so. Dalam falsafah pendidikan kebangsaan, you are wrong, and therefore this is happening. And therefore we need to correct ourselves. We are the one that is responsible for ourselves. Nobody can correct you except you. So when you talk about trust tadi, you can talk about trust at the moment you want it, but if you don't believe in it, then it will not happen. So I feel very comfortable rather than blaming other people. I'll blame myself. What is it that I have not done that this happened? You know, and once you go into that, then because you're more in control of yourself. I can tell Zainul buat cepat, tapi Zainul tak maulah dia. You know. But if I say Zul buat cepat, I will buat cepat because I know I'm in control of myself. And hopefully Zainul tengok, oh kalau Zul buat cepat, aku pun boleh buat cepat. And then you become that exemplar to other people around it. So that is why I'm quite convinced that this sejahtera in that particular sense is very, 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 very useful, because you go back to yourself and you introspect yourself rather than blaming other people and the first go. And then that's where the trust comes in, Zainul. For example, if you see somebody else's who just not talk tapi dia juga deliver at the same time. You know, I think it's a question ini masuk pada pemimpin melalui teladan lah. And there's no other, bagi saya, there's no other way. I remember when I do USM, when I told them, look, you must answer your telephone in 3 rings. You know, what I did was basically I call everybody and I see whether they answer in 3 rings atau tidak. You know, especially the deans. You know? then I know who doesn't answer. But then in my phone, in my office, if my phone rings and then my clerk is not there, I will run and get the phone. And when they dengar, Naib Chancellor bercakap pasal apa, so Kani hari ni keluar. And then they begin to see, oh, this is a serious matter. This guy is not just saying what he wants to say. So it sometimes it's a kind of burdensome, but I think once they get the message that you are really serious and trustworthy about it, and I think it flows a little bit more in that sense. So I don't know, but I think we need to do more work than talk.
Yep, understand. Yep, agree, Ansari.
You know, so if we do that more work, I think perhaps it will probably be more manifestation, action talks more louder than words or something like that.
Yeah.
I think because my name is mentioned, I need to speak a bit.
It works, you know.
Still alive.
Buddy to speak. Okay, yes, go ahead.
I can share with you that Dr. Abdul Hamid Abu Sulaiman, I was overseas pursuing my doctorate, so I didn't have much interaction with him. But in some of the talks that he gave, one of the things that he mentioned is he said, if we really look closely about all the virtues, courage stands up, because it is only with courage that other things can come through.
Yes.
This is number one. And number two, what you have mentioned, Tan Sri, also reminds me of the characteristics of the prophets, because the four main characteristics that the ulama mentioned is, sidq, amana, tabligh, and fatana. So
Yes.
fatana is you bijak, berhikmah, and things like that. And but leaders have to share also. They have to do tabligh. And of course, the first two, they have to be truthful. They have to be trustworthy. It goes without saying. Yeah. So thank you very much.
Thank you. So I'm just repeating what is being said. You put it in Islamic context, which I don't have that context. So thank you very much, Badri. Yeah, but I'm really hoping that we can move on this. I think I honestly think the university has got tremendous potential, but we need to put certain things in certain place, and inshallah we can fly. 40th anniversary 2 years from now.
Inshallah. All right. Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Badri, Prof. Zainul. And I know there are a lot more questions, and we look forward for more questions actually. Unfortunately, because of the time, we have to conclude the sessions. But if you do have burning questions which will not allow you to sleep at night, please just write down the questions, and inshallah we will forward to Tan Sri, because he will be the right person to answer that, and then we will send you back the answer. So basically we will be the middleman to find the answer, inshallah. So again, thank you so much, Tan Sri, mashallah. And I have seen a lot of good feedback and very insightful sessions. And thank you again for all the audience who have been with us for the past 1.5 hours. Jazakumullah khair. May Allah bless all of you, and may we learn to implement exactly like what Tan Sri said. We implement and doing the right thing start of today, and let's do our homework, inshallah. Let's end the session with tasbih kafarah. Subhanakallahumma bihamdik, asyhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. Barakallahu fikum jami'an, jazakumullah khair. Have a nice weekend. Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullah.
Thank you, Tan Sri. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.